In this section, we're going to talk about how to style button elements using the Bootstrap framework. Bootstrap provides a number of classes that we can apply to buttons to style them particular ways. However, they should always contain the btn class to indicate that it's a button that we want styled with Bootstrap. After that, we can add whatever classes we'd like. For instance, we can add the btn default class. This is a Bootstrap class that has a default styling for our buttons. Or we can add the btn primary class. This is a class that indicates that this button is kind of a call to action for our users. And these two, the btn default and the btn primary classes, are probably the two most popular that we'll use in our web applications. Nonetheless, there are a list of other classes that we can use as well. For instance, btn success, btn info, btn warning, btn danger, and we'll see how each of these look in a moment when we view them in our browser. But there's another extremely important class called the btn link class. And this is important because it's very tempting to use attribute tags when we want to have a link or a clickable element that doesn't actually transfer us to a different web page. We only want to use the attribute class when we want to go to a different web page altogether. But there are a number of times when we may want our users to click on a link-like button in order to drive some interactive behavior. And that's exactly what this btn link class is for. Now let's see how each of these looks in our browser. We have our default, primary, success, info, warning, and danger buttons, as well as our link button, which looks like an attribute element but is actually a button element. There is one thing I notice about all these buttons though, which is that they're the same size. I wonder if Bootstrap provides any way to change the size of our buttons. Let's go back into our code to find out. And as we might expect, it turns out Bootstrap does have classes to change the size of our buttons. One class is the btn xs button. Another class is the btn sm button. A third class is the btn lg button. And finally, we have the btn block button. And these correspond to extra small, small, large, and block level buttons. Let's go back into our browser to see how they look. We can see our extra small button has minimal padding, our small button has a little bit more padding, our large button has the most padding, and finally our block level button expands the entire width of the block it's nested in. The final type of button styling Bootstrap gives us is this disabled attribute. There may be times when a user needs to fill out a form or take an action before we want them to be able to click a button. And by setting this disabled attribute to disabled, it prevents them from being able to click that button. Let's see how this works in our browser. And we see that when we hover over this disabled button, it gives us an indication that we can't click on it.